Have you ever thought about how a town gets started? Usually people settle, then they build things. But what if that whole idea was flipped on its head? That is the incredible story of Fitero in Navarra, Spain, a place where a monastery didn't just watch history happen, it actually built a whole town from scratch. So take a look at this. It looks like a huge church right in the middle of a town. Pretty standard stuff. But here's the twist. That's totally backwards. The town actually grew around the church. This one single building is the reason everything else you see is even here. So how on earth does a monastery become the seed for an entire city? Well, to get it, we've got to rewind the clock, way back, almost 900 years, to a really dangerous frontier between warring kingdoms. It's right here, in this crazy, volatile landscape, that a small group of monks showed up to build something completely new. Okay, so picture this. The year is 1140. King Alfonso VII of Castile basically invites the Cistercian order to set up a monastery on this contested land. Now, this wasn't just about finding a quiet place to pray. Oh no, this was a strategic move. And just like that, it became the very first Cistercian monastery in all of Spain, a bold new foothold in a seriously unstable region.
And wow, did things get intense quickly. Just 19 years after it was founded, the monastery was attacked. This was no peaceful retreat, that's for sure. For more than 200 years, it was stuck in this tug-of-war between kingdoms, until finally, in 1373, it was declared part of Navarra. So the big takeaway here? This place wasn't built in peace. It was literally forged in conflict.
So when you're living on a dangerous frontier, you're going to need a lot more than just faith to keep you safe, right? You need to build a fortress. You need walls, high, thick walls. And that brings up a pretty interesting question, doesn't it? Why on earth would a community of monks need battlements, arrow slits, and fortified towers? The answer tells you everything you need to know about how this place had to evolve. They needed what's known as a cortijo. Now, if you hear that word today, you probably think of a charming, rustic farmhouse. Nope, scratch that. Back in medieval times, a cortijo was basically a mini fortress. It was a self-contained, defensible settlement built for one thing: survival. And we actually have this incredible description from an 18th century text that just paints this amazing picture. It describes it as being closed with battlements and having 3 towers. And get this, whenever they thought an attack was coming, they'd lock down the 2 main gates with chains. This was not just a monastery, it was a serious fortress. So this cortijo, it was doing double duty really. First, it was defensive, obviously, a safe place to hide during an attack. But it was also habitational. It was home to all the ordinary people who made the monastery run. The servants, the shepherds, the farmers, and the craftsmen who helped the monks. And it's this little fortified community, this cortijo, that planted the seed for something way, way bigger. It's kind of ironic, right? The constant threat of war is actually what forced the monastery to evolve from a fortress into a real town. The logic was actually pretty simple, but it was a game changer. To really secure this territory and make sure they could survive long-term, the monastery couldn't just hide behind its walls. It needed people, a permanent, loyal population that would actually live there, work the land, and, help defend the place. And that brings us to a huge turning point, the year 1482. The abbot at the time, a guy named Miguel de Peralta, makes a huge decision. He formally invites families to come and settle around the monastery, even offering them land to build their homes. This was it. This was the year the modern town, or villa, of Fitero was officially born. And this is the really cool part. You can literally see this history on the map today. The monastery's original chunk of land, called a Coto Redondo, is right here on this old map. Now compare that to a modern satellite view. The boundaries? They're almost identical. That 12th century land grant literally drew the map for the town that exists right now. So yeah, this isn't just some dusty old history lesson. In Fitero, the monastery's legacy is absolutely everywhere you look, and it's a living, breathing part of the community. And what's the most powerful example of that? Well, that huge church the Cistercians built all those centuries ago, it's now the town's main parish church. Its history isn't tucked away in a museum, it is right at the absolute center of everyday life. And today, the town really leans into this incredible origin story. You can take guided tours, check out these super popular theatrical performances, enjoy music festivals, or hike the trails all around the area. They're even turning the old convent into lodging for tourists, building their future right on the foundations of their past. It's amazing. So when you look at Fitero, you're not just seeing a town with an old church.
You're seeing a community that literally grew out of a fortress of faith, a place shaped by almost 900 years of conflict, prayer, and sheer hard work.
Which really makes you think, right? How many towns do you know where a monastery is the actual heart of the whole place? Fitero's story is just a perfect reminder that pretty much every town, every city, has some hidden history just waiting below the surface, ready for us to discover.